G'day coppers, welcome back to the bush. In this episode of Lockie Up's four-wheel driving, we'll be pitting the pie-eating four-wheel driver's best friend, the Travel Buddy 12-volt oven versus the new Big Bertha from Roadchef. Has the imitator become the innovator? But before we get into the performance testing, let's have a look at the physical differences between the two. So whilst the previous model from Roadchef was almost a carbon copy of the Travel Buddy, the Big Bertha is much larger. So let's check it out. So the Travel Buddy is about 320 wide and the Big Bertha is about 360 wide. So it's an extra 40 mil of width, and the depth, Travel Buddy is about 280 and the Big Bertha is about 300 mil. So it's an extra 20 mil of depth as well. And the height, 185 for the Travel Buddy versus 255 for the Roadchef Big Bertha. So an extra 70 mil in that dimension. So that tells me that probably we can fit stuff that's taller in, something like a roast for instance. But the main attribute physically that we're looking for is more volume, because I know I've struggled to fit stuff into the Travel Buddy when I'm not just eating pies. But the Big Bertha might fix that, so let's have a look at that now. So let's have a look at the internal differences between the two. So the Travel Buddy is 255 mil deep versus the Big Bertha, which is 270 mil deep. So we get an additional 15 mil of depth. When it comes to width, 270 mil for the Travel Buddy versus 310 for the Big Bertha. So we get an additional 40 mil of width. But the biggest difference is the height. So the height of the Travel Buddy internally is 100 mil versus 150 mil. So an extra 50% again for the Big Bertha. Now when it comes to volume, 6.9 litres versus 12.6 litres. So we've got an additional 5.7 litres of capacity. But that's not all. Let's have a look at the feature differences between the two. When it comes to controls, we've got two controls here and we've got three controls down the bottom here. But what do they do? So we've got a temperature control on the Travel Buddy and we have a timer control. Now importantly, with the Travel Buddy, we have a permanent on position, unlike the Roadchef Big Bertha. So if you have a, let's say, Red Arc remote system where you can turn your Travel Buddy on with your phone when it's in the canopy, you can do that with the Travel Buddy. However, you can't do that with the Big Bertha. But the Big Bertha has a couple of other tricks up its sleeve. So it has a temperature control, just like the Travel Buddy, but it has an element control in the middle there. So you can either select the top element, the bottom element, or both simultaneously. And that's going to come in handy if you're doing things like, let's say, cheese on toast, or maybe even nachos. And we have a timer control there. But unlike the Travel Buddy, as I said before, it can just go onto a timer. There is no permanently on position. And one last final thing to note is, just like its little brother, the Big Bertha comes standard with a 50 amp Anderson. The Travel Buddy, however, comes standard in retail with a cigarette lighter plug. Now I've retrofitted this one with a fuse and a 50 amp Anderson, and I think that's a better setup. But apparently if you ask and buy directly from the factory, they will put an Anderson on there. Disappointing to note, however, that your Anderson doesn't come with a fuse. So if it's not fused properly further down the track, that could cause a problem inside the Big Bertha. I would have liked to have seen an independent fuse wired into the Big Bertha, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. So we're going to put aside the Travel Buddy for a minute and concentrate on the performance of the Big Bertha. And first up, timer accuracy. I mean, it's no good if your timer tells you you're putting it on for an hour and a half and it only runs for an hour. You pull out your pie and it's still half frozen in the center. So let's have a look at the graph for that. And here we have the test results for the timer accuracy on the Big Bertha. Now up and down here are the time in minutes, and along the bottom we have the various settings. Now the elapsed timer, that's the measured time, is the orange bars, and the blue bars are the timer settings. So on the 40-minute timer setting, we were down nearly about 10% at 36 minutes and 2 seconds. At the 60-minute mark, we were down about 6% at 56 minutes and 20 seconds. At the 80-minute mark, we were down nearly 7% at 74 minutes and 35 seconds. At the 100-minute mark, we were down about 8% at 92 minutes and 20 seconds. And finally, at the 120-minute mark, we were down nearly 3% at 116 minutes and 51 seconds. So not too bad overall. So the timer accuracy for a mechanical timer, I think is pretty good. It's not as accurate as a digital timer, of course, but for the job it's doing, it's accurate enough. But what about the thermostat accuracy? It's no good if you put it on 80 degrees Celsius and it's actually running at 180 degrees Celsius. You got to burn whatever's in there. So we dragged out the Thermocouple Probe data logger, and here are the results. And here are the Big Bertha thermostat accuracy results. Now you can see on the left hand side 0 to 200 degrees Celsius, and this is the elapsed time in minutes. Now on the 80 degree setting you can see it turning on and off, and that's called hysteresis. But what's important is the average, and the average was 89 degrees Celsius. At the 120 degree setting, you can see the orange line here, it averaged at 119 degrees Celsius, so that's almost spot on. At the 150 degrees Celsius setting, you can see the peaks and troughs are fairly high, but our average is 156. And the one we'll most often be cooking at 180 degrees Celsius, it averaged in between here at 177 degrees Celsius. So almost spot on. Pretty happy with that, let me tell you. So the thermostat is pretty accurate. I mean, if you set it on 180 degrees, where most of your cooking is done anyway, it's almost dead on as an average. But it's got two elements in it. So what about current usage? I mean, it's no good if it drains your battery in half an hour. So let's check out exactly how much current it's using in the various settings. And here's a current draw comparison between Big Bertha and the Travel Buddy 12 volt ovens. Now on the left hand side here, you can see the current draw in amps from 0 to 20 amps, with the bottom element only on Big Bertha, 9.23 amps. With the top element only, 9.32 amps. When we turned on both elements, 18.53 amps. And finally, for comparison, the Travel Buddy, 9.68 amps. So yep, it definitely pounds through the batteries. Don't get me wrong, it's not induction cooktop powered by 3000 watt inverter, crazy battery hungry, but near 20 amps is nothing to sneeze about. So next one, the 4 frozen pie test. So what I did was I preheated it to 180 degrees, exactly the same as what I did for the Travel Buddy, and here are the results. And here we have the 4 pie test. 4 frozen 4 and 20s to be exact. And they both went into preheated ovens, with Big Bertha and the Travel Buddy both sitting at 180 degrees Celsius, both running just off a 105 amp hour AGM battery. And as you can see, by the time we opened and shut the door, we'd lost 10 degrees Celsius. So as your mum told you when you were young, don't open up the door on the oven, it'll let all the heat escape. She wasn't wrong. And now we can see the plot of the two graphs. So the Travel Buddy's in orange and Big Bertha's in blue. So the Big Bertha did a better job, but not substantially more, but definitely did a better job than the Travel Buddy. But you need to take into consideration, of course, that it's chewing a lot more amps. So when it comes to 4 frozen 4 and 20 pies, the Travel Buddy plays second fiddle to Big Bertha. Not by a massive margin, but a substantial margin nonetheless. But you'd almost expect that, considering it chews almost twice the current of the Travel Buddy. But what do we think in the end? Will my Travel Buddy be now replaced with Big Bertha? Now this isn't an easy decision for me. I preference Australian made products over imported products all the time, even if there's a price premium to pay. I mean, there's a reason I stopped wearing Blunston boots when they shifted manufacturing overseas and started wearing RMs, because I want to keep my dollars onshore as opposed to pushing them overseas. But RMs are good shoes and they innovate. Travel Buddy has been sitting on their laurels for many years with zero innovation. This unit here, the Big Bertha, has every modification that I'd like to see in the Travel Buddy. So that is the reason, ladies and gents, that I think the Big Bertha is a better unit than the Travel Buddy. Admittedly, it chews more current, but then again, it's a bigger unit, you'd expect it to. Now, we'll be pulling this apart, and I'll also be checking it out with step-up converters as well, even though in the instructions it specifically says do not use step-up converters, it'll ruin your warranty. I think they've been watching my videos. Anyway guys, now if you like this video, don't forget to give it the old thumbs up, and if you didn't, by all means, give it a thumbs down. Not thrice, but twice. Thanks, guys. See you in the next one. Actually, well, I'll be ripping this thing apart. So if you've enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring that bell icon. It's really important to us and you won't miss out on our future content. Now, if you want to support the channel, by all means, consider becoming a patron on Patreon and you get things like early access to our videos on YouTube. Either way, we hope to see you out on the tracks.